Welcome to the Assembling Inclusion podcast. On this show, we feature different programs, individuals, and initiatives focused on being more inclusive of individual needs. We invite you to learn right alongside us. If you want some additional resources or access to our courses, please visit our website or follow us on social media. But for right now, let's get right to the episode. Coming up next on the Assembling Inclusion podcast.
And that's why actually kids with disabilities make the best engineers. And I always tell this to the engineering professors at NC State. Why? Because kids with disabilities have to problem solve every day, and they're innovators every day of their life to fit into the box of the education system and society.
In this episode, I talked to Joann Blumenfeld, who is the director of the Catalyst program. Catalyst, as we'll hear in this episode, is an inclusive STEM program based out of North Carolina. We had a great conversation about ensuring that our curriculum is accessible for all learners, helping students find their pathways towards success, and the value of having high expectations for our learners, and the successes of the Catalyst program. So let's dive right in. Welcome back to the Assembly Inclusion podcast. I'm here today with Joann Blumenfeld, who was recently named Times Innovative Teacher of the Year for 2022, and she is currently the director of the Catalyst program. So Joann, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Katie. I'm excited about all you do, and I appreciate you having me so we can talk about the kids and all the great things they can do.
And I'm so excited to have you. I feel like this is going to be a great conversation. So first, to start off, can you just explain the Catalyst program for our listeners?
I worked in Lake County Public Schools for 20 years. I've taught pre-K through high school. I'm a certified in special ed and science, so I taught science and engineering. I actually don't consider myself a special ed teacher. I consider myself a science teacher who can teach all learners. And I hope one day there will be no more special ed teachers, because I hope one day all educators can teach all learners. I think that really should be our goal for education. But I saw when I worked in the public school system that a lot of kids with disabilities, and I hate to use that phrase, I use that phrase because I work with IEPs and 504 plans, and that is the typical word used and the language utilized. And I actually talked to parents and students about that language, and they were okay with it. I'm still personally not okay with that word. But when I tell kids they don't have disabilities, it's just really fitting in the education setting. We have to change the educational setting and how it's done. So when I taught public school, what I found is a lot of times students with disabilities were not doing good in the regular ed classroom. And the reason for this, I found, was fourfold. First was you had special education teachers who didn't have science background, so they couldn't really teach the curriculum. Then you had science teachers who, no fault of their own, had 20 or 30 kids. They had students with behavior issues, English language learners, and special ed kids with limited training in how to deal with these kids. And they just weren't really doing a good job with it. And a lot of, at least in North Carolina, science is taught text-based learning, which students with disabilities tend to have more language deficits in general. And I hate to generalize about any population. So I decided I wanted to change the system. So within my classroom, I changed it to me, a good high quality teacher can teach all learners. And I had all hands on STEM. I did engineering design with kids, all kids that were below grade level. They were passing the state exam. And so all these things were helpful. But when I was a teacher, my budget was given to me was $1.50 a year per student. And I only worked within my 20 years with BIPOC communities, and my students were typically 98% free and reduced lunch rate, so low income students, because that's where my heart is. So then I started doing grant writing and researching, and I came across the most startling statistic in my grant research writing, that 80% of people with disabilities are unemployed between the ages of 24 and 64. And that's according to the US Department of Labor. And that to me is a horrendous statistic, and I don't understand why everybody's not shouting that to the roofs. So that means us as educators, and I put it in the royal we, including myself, are not doing a good enough job for these kids. So I really wanted to set out to change that. In addition, in North Carolina, we have over 220,000 students who have disabilities K through 12, and that's typical through the US, 12 to 15% of any education population in public school. So if 80% of these kids have potential of not working as adults, that is just totally wrong. And that means we have to change the system, because work is very important. One, it leaves kids a life of poverty if they don't have a job. Two, everyone needs to be included in society and be able to use their talents and skills. So that really hit my heart. I want these kids to be able to utilize their skills and talents and participate in society and not lead a life of poverty. So when I started the Catalyst program, I was set out to start 3 different mindset switches, which is what I was aiming for. So the first mindset switch is I want kids with disabilities know they can be successful in STEM. And it's pretty ironic because many of our most famous scientists had disabilities and engineers, but yet students with disabilities are underrepresented in STEM careers. But I wanted them to know they could do it. The other mindset switch that I wanted was I want parents to know that these kids can be the breadwinners of their families and not the burdens. And I will tell you I'll get to that story in a little bit, but I'll tell you a story how that changed. And then I also wanted to change the mindset of professors and industry leaders to know these people are valuable assets. To me, people with disabilities are the greatest wasted national resource we have in this country. So the Catalyst program that I designed, and I did this while I was working full-time as a teacher. I'm currently full-time employed at the Science House, but I'll get to that in a minute. So we provide 3 prongs. The first is learning STEM content and skills. And the second prong is workforce readiness skills. Because if you know STEM skills and you can't interview and write your resume, it is no help. And you have to know good workplace communication. And the third prong is self-advocacy, learning to use your own voice and self-advocate your needs versus other people telling you what to do. So kids receive a 1-week STEM program in the summer. They received a paid STEM internship, which is very valuable. Our program is also considered not one and done. We typically keep kids 3 and 4 years. So the kids, when they graduate high school, they already have 3 STEM jobs with engineering professors. So when they go to college, they already have the experience of working with these people, knowing they can do it. And also it helps them get employed when they're in college. So that helps the workforce readiness. And then we have Saturday sessions during the school year. In addition to that, we always have a large trip every year. So this year we've been invited by NASA. We're working with Tracy Minich, who is a great name for you all to know. He is Mission Control Manager at NASA in Houston, and he's visually impaired. And he calls the kids the stomp on the box kids, because the problem just not is the box itself, but we should all stomp on it, create a new box. He has designed a program and we've been invited by NASA to come in Houston in April for 3 days, and they're going to do a special program. I don't know if you know this, but NASA wants 12% of their workforce to be people with disabilities. So they're heavily recruiting kids with disabilities that have skill sets, everything from engineering to accounting. So that's just a good little point of reference. So we have won 4 national awards in 6 years. We were the only team ever to win at Lemelson MIT in Invent Team competition with all students with disabilities. And I bring this particular award up too, because when the kids presented at MIT, it was one of the best experiences because we got there and the kids were very nervous. I was one of those kind of educators where everyone had to present, whether you had autism or anxieties, this was going to be a skill you were going to do. So when we got there, the kids got off the bus from the airport and they walked around MIT and they're like, oh, I don't know why we were nervous. This is a place I belong. They right away saw people at MIT are a bit quirky, and we're all quirky. I don't mean in any disrespect, but they felt like they finally find their home. Then I had parents in terms of that mindset switch. When the kids presented at MIT, I had one mother who cried and she said, now I finally realized my kids have the skill set to become who they want to be and not be a burden. And then professors, I was thanking them for helping us. Our students designed an app that notifies farmers when their cows are lame. And this was a very important invention that they made because the one on the market was over 100,000 and the one they invented was less than 1,000. So cows that have lameness are stressed and they don't produce a lot of milk. So they were able to develop this. We won other awards, but the biggest award of the program is our students are being successful in college. We had the first round that are graduating college with STEM degrees. So I'm very proud. We also do self-advocacy. I really believe kids need their own voice. We've met with Governor Cooper, Governor McCrory, Senator Tillis, Temple Grandin. We have a letter of commendation from President Obama. We want kids to use their own voices to promote change of what they think needs to be done for themselves to improve the education system. So we work on that. The other program we started this year, and now I'm working full-time at NC State, and we're located at the Science House, and the Science House itself has a wide, diverse range of programs, and their goal is to include a lot of people that usually don't have good opportunity in STEM. So we work in rural areas with minority populations, women in STEM, so they wide assortment of program. Mine is just one. So we received a National Science Foundation grant this year. We're running a program called GIST, connecting students with autism to geographical information system technologies. So the kids are learning just technology, also drone piloting. We're working toward their certification. I think certifications are important for kids to gain jobs. A certified drone pilot can make $45 an hour. So I tell the kids, you can get your license at age 16. You know, that's a good way to put yourself through college. So we're trying to develop a research to prove what we're doing and develop national models for others to do it.
That's so wonderful. Everything you were talking about just like resonated with me so much. Even diving back to the beginning when we were talking about how you're not a special ed teacher. You're a teacher who could teach all learners. And I wish everyone had that mindset. I mean, I graduated from my undergrad in 2015, and we had to get a special ed cert. Like, you weren't graduating as an education major unless you had that cert. So everybody coming out, regardless of what job you were getting, was prepared to teach the diverse learning needs. And I wish a lot more people felt that way. But like,
Yeah.
I'm just so impressed with everything the program is doing. When I was reading about it, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I could have just seen like so many of my students benefiting from something like this. I co-taught science once, I think, in my entire time. I taught language arts mostly and co-taught language arts. But I remember them going into high school and they were like, oh, well, it's great. You're going into environmental science. That's more hands-on and that's where you shine. But then in chemistry, you're not going to do as well. So we're going to put you back in the resource room. And I'm like, no, that's not. No, we need to make it more accessible.
And I think one of the mistakes in public school education or all education is they think accommodations are enough. Accommodations are useful. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes kids need small test setting or voice to text or all those kind of things. No problem with that. And as a matter of fact, we have the disability resource officers at NC State teach the kids about all kinds of assistive technologies that can help them. But the real key is to make innovative and accessible curriculum. And that's the point I think schools are missing in general. Not all schools, I'm not trying to throw stones, but to be honest, I had a lot of kids in my high school that wanted to join my engineering class, even though it was for kids who were below grade level and were considered in the occupational course of study, but getting a high school diploma, because good hands-on STEM is good for all learners. And if we develop good quality curriculum and material and teaching styles, everyone can be helped, whether they are an English language learner or they have deficits. Just good teaching is good teaching. Yeah,
exactly. They always say shoot for the middle, but I'm like, shoot for the ends, and then everybody gets what they need. Like, make sure everybody feels supported, and then everyone's getting something.
And the other thing I will say is sometimes students with disabilities don't present themselves as typical as other students. Like, I have one student, if a professor just didn't know, I mean, he's finished calculus in 10th grade already. But the point is, if you met him, you would think, what can this kid really do? And I think we have to get rid of those stereotypes and things that people think. And a lot of our kids have splinter skills, like they're way above their peers in a lot of things, but sometimes below things. As human beings, we all use our splinter skills. When we have jobs, we take our best skill, right? We utilize it. So it shouldn't be a deficit. It should be we change the education system or to create a new system.
Exactly. That's so important. I remember having a student who his writing was not great, and that was his area of weakness according to his IEP. But like, if you sat there and talked to him about the book, he would analyze it. He was saying all these wonderful things, but they never wanted to put him in a co-taught class because they're like, well, the writing isn't there. I'm like, but the ideas are there. So let's try to create an environment that works for him.
I think you think like me, Katie. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I studied science and engineering as undergrad and graduate student. I'm a lateral entry teacher. I've done a wide range of things. I've worked overseas 10 years. I can deliver a baby, install a water pipe, worked as an administrative officer. And I think all those skill sets helped me as a teacher because I saw what the real world needs. And then I could add that to my curriculum. And the other thing, I used to tell the kids, first of all, who makes the most mistakes in the room? It's me. So they understand that mistakes are okay. We really need that growth mindset. It's not the mistake, it's the perseverance and how do we fix it? And how do we figure out how to solve the problem? That's the area. And that's why actually kids with disabilities make the best engineers. And I always tell this to the engineering professors at NC State. Why? Because kids with disabilities have to problem solve every day, and they're innovators every day of their life to fit into the box of the education system and society. And they don't mind failure. You get a lot of advanced placement kids who come to engineering, and the first time they fail a design, they think the life is over. So my kids with disabilities are very good. They're like, oh, no big deal. We're just going to persevere and figure out a way how to solve the problem. So if you think about it, that's important. And we also talk about making an inclusive and diverse STEM workforce. And in order for a STEM workforce to be really innovative, we have to include a place at the table for everybody.
Exactly. I want to talk about the structure of the program. So you had mentioned that there is a week-long summer program and then there's Saturday sessions, right? What do those sessions typically look like? So what does like a summer session look like versus what do the Saturday sessions during the school year look like?
I will tell you, our programs are free. That's another thing I think is very important. We cannot be charging people to attend these programs. So I'm funded through North Carolina Vocational Rehabilitation. I started first with a small grant when I started, and now I work with them as a partner. So it's important to get funding so that people can attend free. So income should not be a barrier. So the summer session is, we take kids from all over the state. So I have kids that travel 3 hours to get here. So I have kids that wake up 6 in the morning to get here for 9 to 12. just to be here, because there's not a lot of programs, which means we need to create more of these programs. And eventually we want to spread throughout the state so we can have satellites. So a typical program is hands-on. I tell the professors in a 3-hour program, they can't talk more than 15 minutes. And that's important. Nobody likes to be lectured to. After we talk, we do hands-on labs, we do engineering design activities, we do research projects. So all that takes the majority of the bulk. So the kids are here from 8 to 4 for the week. For our Saturday sessions, we also do workforce readiness. So the kids will learn resume writing. They will learn interviewing. Next week, I have IBM coming to interview the kids to practice mock interviews. We do college readiness. What does disability services look like? How do you apply to college? We have a lot of first-time college kids, from their families. So we do all those kind of skill sets. How do we self-advocate? How do we self-determine what we want? What are our goals in life? Not what everyone else tells us. On Saturdays, the kids come 9 to 12. And then the internships during COVID, we had to do virtual ones, but with COVID being over, we do in person. They work with engineering and science professors, mostly here at NC State University. And the professors, I made it clear the kids aren't just supposed to wash dishes. I want them to do high level skills. And don't get me wrong, I worked in research labs. We all have to wash Petri dishes, but I wanted them to do a model of whatever the professor does. They may or may not have that kind of level of skill set, but they make a model. So they're making solutions. They're working with electron microscopes. They're working in engineering design. They're working in 3D printing. So they do skill sets that the professors use in these locations. So they gain a lot of skills.
I like the focus on both the STEM related issues, but then also getting a job. And the internship is really great. That's going to give them a lot of experience for when they go to college or into the workforce. They're going to have that hands-on experience to be able to say that they accomplished all those research projects alongside a professor. And that's going to be amazing for like a resume builder.
And they have the experience and they're not afraid of it. And then they can show they have the skills. It also is important for the professors to start seeing these kids. And they did after MIT, they started seeing these kids as their future grad students and doctoral students. They might not present themselves as the same, but they have so many skill sets. They want these kids now. Another big thing we're doing this year, I didn't mention, it's called Reach for the Stars, Be a Star. So we're holding a STEM fair and resource fair for kids across the state, middle and high school, who are interested in STEM careers, because I always worry about rural areas in our area. We also have a lot of military families here in North Carolina. They don't always get the viewpoint that they can be successful. So I want to at least give them that glimpse. So we're going to hold a resource fair here, and the kids will do hands-on STEM. I'm hoping Tracy Minish will come from NASA. We want kids also to see themselves by other people like them, so they can also see that they've been successful. As part of our model too, I hire NC State students with disabilities to be our assistants and mentors. And that's really important to me, because these kids are successful already in STEM in undergrad, and the kids can start relating and seeing models of people. We also try to get professionals who have disabilities to come teach too, but it doesn't have to be just people with disabilities. So we try to build that model up so they can see the pathway.
That's really great. They have that mentorship piece with the students that are currently there, but they also have the professionals that they can look to and see what their future could look like. I'm sure growing up, it's hard if you don't see yourself reflected in the pathway that you want for your future. So that's great that you're giving them those opportunities.
And we also show them that failure is okay. One of my favorite professors was when we went to Duke, and the guy explained to all the kids how he failed undergraduate. And I was like, yes, because not that we want anyone to fail undergraduate, we want kids to pass, but we want kids to know the road doesn't have to be smooth, but you can still get there as long as you persevere. And there's different pathways. We talk about starting at community colleges because they're smaller, and then transferring to a big college, or other different pathways. We show them different pathways to do what they want to do.
That's great to discuss that failure, because I feel like so many times you hear from like professors who are like, I was excellent my entire time and I got into all these great schools and I didn't have any challenges. And it's like, okay, well, what about all of us that did? So that's nice that there's a focus on you can fail at something and then continue to push forward.
I think sometimes we push college too much, in the sense that people need a good quality profession that will pay well so they can live well. So we have students that will go on to become electricians, welders. I have a student, she's doing welding now. And the key is the kids have to figure out what they want to do to be successful and what kind of learning they need to do that. So in North Carolina, they push college. And I think that is a disservice to other kids that could do some of these trade jobs that are really in high demand. And that's definitely high pay. I have a kid now doing HVAC, and he's making really a lot of money, and he's only 20 now. There's all pathways to success as long as it's something they're going to enjoy.
Exactly. I remember always saying that to I had middle school students, so I didn't have them when they were going on to high school. They were getting ready to go to like Vo Tech. and they're like, I want to be a diesel mechanic. And I'm like, that's great. You're gonna make so much more money than me. Like, you don't need to go to college. If you don't want to, you don't have to. There are other options for you. And it's New Jersey too. I think it's across the country. There's a push for college. And I'm like, but that's not what everybody needs. I mean, it's great if you want to go. If you don't want to go, there are other great, valuable options that need to be endorsed. Even the community college aspect of like, well, I'm not sure. Okay, well, let's go to a community college, try it out for a year or two, get some experience. Like, it's a little bit less of a cost, see what works for you. And then if you want to continue, you can. I wish there was more emphasis on what works best for you in your career, because my students I only have a couple of students who are now graduated from high school, and they are, either in their trade or they're going to an additional trade school now. And I'm like, they're going to come out and have a great stable job that they enjoy.
So the low cost, a lot of our students that I work with are low incomes. In North Carolina right now, community college is free, so they can go there 2 years. In North Carolina, it's called the NC Promise program. We have 4 universities the kids can go for $500 a semester. So we visited those. We talk about student debt a lot, which is a whole different subject, but there are pathways that they can go and not be in debt when they graduate, which is very important because a lot of them are low income to begin with. You don't need to leave school and then have debt.
Definitely. So you had talked about the different field trips that you take them on each year, and you said that you're going to NASA this year, which is amazing, and I'm really jealous. What are some of the other field trips that you've taken students on in the past? How have you seen it be beneficial?
We've been to the U.S. Patent Office. We were invited there. We went to MIT in Boston. Last year, we went to PARI. It's a radio telescope site in North Carolina. We're actually already invited to Cape Canaveral and Space Force in 2024. So I want to show the kids the world. When I do my trips, I should have said parents are not allowed. So it's very important kids learn independent skills. I will never forget when we got off the plane in DC. Actually, I was alone with the kids, and kids had never been on a subway. It's rush hour. We get there with our suitcases. I have kids swinging from the bars and the subway. I'm sure DC has never forgotten us. But it's really important kids learn those independent skills, how to be in a hotel. I had a kid actually that finished also calculus in 10th grade, but never ordered his own food. We have a lot of kids that have to learn some functional skills, like how to navigate without my parents, how to navigate a different kind of schedule and things. So I always like to give kids these experiences. I also want to show them the world, like what's out there beyond our doorstep, and jobs they can do, like at the U.S. Patent Office or MIT or NASA.
I like that you're giving them that independence. That's so important too. And it increases their confidence then too, right? Because then they feel like I did it by myself, but you're doing it in like a safe way because you're there and they're in like a nice supervised program, but they still have that freedom to build on those skills and feel like, okay, I did it myself. I can confidently go out and do it myself now in the future. That's really great. You had talked a little bit too about the connection to the community. I think like you have the connection with the college right now where the program is housed. Are there any other community-based partnerships?
Oh, we have so many, and that's one of the most important parts of the program. You want to develop a lot of community partnerships. So even as an educator, I ran a communities and schools program. Educational partnerships is important. I really believe schools should be a one-stop shopping. One time I worked in a low-income elementary school, and parents were so busy, they couldn't even take their kids to activities. So I had during lunchtime, recess time, we could do Boy Scouts. We had the largest Boy Scout troop. We did piano. We did Girl Scouts. We did so many different topics. I hope one day that we can have that kind of one-stop shopping vision for schools, and also take into mind that the low-income parents can't always get the kids, even our after-school buses. So I try to make many partnerships with industries. At our Reach for the Star STEM fairs, we want industries to come in and show kids different jobs and things too. We also ask companies to come in to do some teaching. Also soft skills, like I told you, IBM's coming next week to teach how to interview, so the kids will interview and get practice with the professionals. So we have partnerships with Natural Science Museum. NC Space Grant is a big partner with us. NASA is a big partner. It's really important to develop these partnerships. I'm seeing a lot more in the workforce. They're developing more like neurodiverse interviews. There's a big deficit in the United States and North Carolina in the STEM workforce. So workforce is starting to understand these kids are valuable. So they're trying to change their systems too. Fidelity, for example, has a support group for people with disabilities. So there's different kinds of support groups, and I think companies are starting to switch their mindset a little bit too. So by having these partnerships, we help companies progress and do this. We also, for our NASA trip, since the kids go free, we had to ask for donations from corporate funding. That's another way you can use corporate funding and resources. Also, I tell teachers they got to go out to the communities. Like that's what I did. They used to call me, the joke around school was I was the streetwalker in the school. And why they said that in a nice sort of way. Like every June, I would go out after school and I would walk the streets. I'd knock on industry's doors. What can you do for my kids? Can you come teach them? Can you give me something? Can you help us? Because we have to look at the community's partners. And these companies have vested interest in our communities being strong and having a good workforce and a good STEM workforce. The Museum of Natural Science has been a wonderful partner for us. One of our internships is kids teach visitors with carts there on STEM topics. That improves the kids' communication skills, but it also helps them help the community. NC Space Grant, they've been a really big supporter of us and giving us opportunities and actually helping fund partly our trip to NASA. So these partnerships can help you build your program and increase opportunities for kids, whether they're in the public school setting or the setting.
You talked a lot about all the different successes of the program, but what do you consider to be some of your biggest successes of Catalyst so far?
Well, I always say my biggest success of Catalyst is my kids are doing well in college. That to me is success because that means I built their skill set up so they can then go on and spread their wings and be successful. It doesn't mean they didn't have bumpy roads in between. I'm not saying everything was totally smooth, but they build up the perseverance, the basic skill sets, and the confidence that they can go and do this. To me, that is my biggest success. We've won national awards, of course. It's nice to say that for different national awards we win, but it all goes back to the kids. And the national awards we won because of the kids. They're my biggest accomplishment. Just meeting them and seeing them be successful is our biggest success. And, I always tell kids they're the new improved model. And if we want our nation to be strong and we want our country to be strong, we can't have 80% of 15% of the population not working. We need to use all their wonderful skill sets and abilities. So we need to go out and change the system, stomp on the box and develop innovative systems so these kids can succeed. Again, I hate to use the word disability. It's really society that has to change to utilize their abilities. And that's really the mindset switch that we have to have as a society, because this is the greatest national resource that we've wasted, and it just doesn't make sense.
It's great to see that the program has been so successful in getting the students doing well in STEM fields in college. I think that's a real testament to the fact that things do need to change in public schools and just K-12 and education in general, and making more of the focus on how can we change the way things are structured to support individual student needs. I think that is so accurate. And it is so obviously it's working because all your students are. It should be used as a model on a larger scale because everybody's doing well. It clearly has a success rate. So I wish more schools would adopt that kind of approach.
Yeah, and it's not that hard. I really started this program as a teacher. I got a small $5,000 grant. We're way up to a couple million now. But the point is, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, if I can do it, anyone can do it. It's just more a willingness and wantingness to do it. It's anybody can do it. I did it. You can do it. Everyone should do what I done, because if you think of that statistic, I keep going back to it because it was a huge shocker for me as an educator. Oh my God, I'm teaching these kids and 80% of them probably will be unemployed when they graduate high school. And that is wrong. That means we in the universal we are doing something wrong. And that's why we need these innovative systems. And there's other ways of doing it too. This just is one system that I created that is working. And we continuously improve. Nothing is perfect. Every year I try to improve and we try to add things. I've talked to parents. So a new thing we're going to add is informal parent meetings when I do my sessions. A lot of the parents said when they're in high school, they feel more isolated. No sense reinventing the wheel. Maybe another parent dealt with this. Teenagers have challenges all in themselves with or without disability. So we're going to start a little parent group that they can come on Saturdays and just talk to each other. We have to look at the whole community and how we can support them. You have to look at and I was in the Peace Corps, you have to look at the whole community. You have to go out and meet the people. Some of my best parent teacher conferences, I don't own a car, I ride the city buses. Those were some of the places of my best conferences with parents were on the city buses. Or go to churches and meet people, or wherever they are, or whatever, places of worship, or whatever they are. You have to go out and talk and meet with the people so they know that they can do this.
So I was going to ask you, do you have, other than the parent groups, do you have any other plans for expansion for Catalyst presently?
Well, yes. I mean, I have visions. I just got to get the staffing. I'm particular about staffing because I want to keep a high quality program, but we want to expand the program throughout the state. Honestly, I have a very large wait list, and picking kids, I tell the kids, because you didn't get picked doesn't mean it's you. It just means I don't have room. So I need to develop more room. And again, I have kids drive 3 hours to get here. And I've had kids that camp out in a campsite so they can come during the week. And we don't provide housing because we don't have funding for that at this point. So I'd like to expand across the state. I would like other people to do what we do. That's why I try to talk to people like you so I can get the word out that they too can do these things. And I'm happy to help anyone. I told Time when I won that little innovative award, which I really think is for the kids, is people can call me. I'm happy to help you. I spoke to a teacher in California when I presented conferences and teach conferences. I've taught a lot of hands-on STEM on everything from nanotechnology to electricity. So teaching people how to do it, I think that's really important. We want teachers also to become more educated. To me, if you're not a lifelong learner as a teacher, you're not doing a good job. I've had a lot of fellowships. I have literally thousands of hours, and I mean thousands of PD, because everything you can learn, you can add to your class and become more innovative in your classroom. So we need to change the mindset of teachers. We also need to pay our educators well and show respect so we get more people in these fields, and especially people in STEM fields. There's a lot of different opportunities, and we're going to lose our science and engineering teachers. But even special ed teachers face a lot of challenges. At least in North Carolina, we do not pay teachers enough. We do not even pay here teachers for master's degrees. They have a lot of other duties. I think since COVID, there's been a lack of respect for education professionals, even more so. And we need to change that mindset because educators are the key to the future of this country. So just in general, if we want a good quality education, we need to work on that piece too.
You had talked about how people can contact you if they're interested in starting something like this in their area, which would be amazing.
Yeah.
But what advice would you give overall to someone who's either looking to start a program like this, or just a STEM teacher in general, or a teacher looking to make their classroom more inclusive for all learners?
First, I'll say publicly my email. It's jrblumen@ncsu.edu. So I'm happy to contact and help anyone. Happy to give ideas. I've written a lot of grants and things. So anything I can help anyone, I'm happy to do. But in general, just be innovative in your thinking and don't let any barriers stand in your way. I learned that when I was in the Peace Corps years ago after I finished grad school. I started this program with a small grant I wrote for $5,000. Start small and build up. And just think of high quality STEM, innovative ways of teaching. When I taught, and why my kids passed the end of grade tests, even though they were on 4th and 5th grade level and the test was high school level, was every day, whatever concept, it was a hands-on. We made a model, we did a dance, we sang a song, we did engineering design in labs. Add good quality hands-on STEM education. And have a high level of expectation. I never forget when I went to the museum and my kids made a museum exhibit on nanotechnology. And I had a parent come over to me and said, "Oh, I wish my student could do this, but they're not in the gifted class." Little did she know those kids were kids in the essential program in Wake County, were kids on grades 4 through 6 level, which were below middle school level. They were the ones making the exhibit and teaching visitors. So you have to have high expectations of kids and understand they might not present in the same way, but they can do equal or much better than their peers. So change the mindsets of people by doing and showing and demonstrating. Get people that look like them in the sense of show them STEM professionals that have disabilities that are successful. There's a pathway. Show them that failure is okay. It's perseverance that we need and the growth mindset. When I joined the Peace Corps years ago, when I was after grad school, I thought I could save the world. And what I learned in the Peace Corps, well, beside the fact that Filipino people saved me, that's a whole other conversation, is you can always help one person. And actually on my wrist, my bracelet that I wear is one of my favorite quotes. "He who saves one life saves the world entire." And it doesn't mean you physically have to save somebody, but if you can help one kid, you can really save the world because that kid can help be your doctor that saves you. One of the secretaries at one of my schools had a poster on her door that said, "Do you want the student to be the robber that kills you or the doctor that saves you?" So I know that's sort of extreme, but the point is we can all do something and every teacher can do something. They can help 2 or 3 kids. They can develop a program. And I think if we change the mindset, I think every single person can help save the world, including people in industry and universities. Like we all have to help each other.
I think that's wonderful advice. So that was perfect. And I think I'm going to end on that. I want to thank you so much, Joann, for being here with us today and telling us all about catalysts and inclusive education. I'm just so grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's so grateful to spend time with you. This is like my passion, so I love sharing about it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Assembling Inclusion podcast. I hope the information in this episode taught you something new, gave you a new idea, or showcased a new perspective. If you liked the episode, feel free to leave us a review or comment. If you have a recommendation for an individual or an organization who would make a great guest, you can message us on Twitter or Instagram or send us an email at assemblinginclusion@gmail.com. See you next time.